Hello fellow gardeners and welcome back to the Humus Heritage. Today we're diving deep into a topic that's not just about growing better plants, but about fundamentally transforming how we think about our relationship with the soil beneath our feet. If you've ever reached for that familiar bag of peat moss at the garden center, this episode is going to completely change your perspective. We're pulling back the curtain on one of gardening's most damaging yet normalized practices, and revealing why compost isn't just an alternative. It's actually a revolutionary force that peat moss could never hope to match. Let's talk about what peat moss actually is, because understanding this changes everything. Those fluffy brown bales you see stacked at nurseries represent the compressed remains of ancient sphagnum moss and other plant materials that have been accumulating in waterlogged bogs for thousands upon thousands of years. We're talking about ecosystems that have been slowly building themselves since the last ice age, layer by microscopic layer, creating some of the most unique and irreplaceable habitats on our planet. When we casually toss a bag of peat into our shopping cart, we're purchasing the harvested remnants of a living ecosystem that took millennia to form and mere hours to destroy. The devastation goes far beyond the visible destruction of these ancient landscapes. Peatlands are extraordinary carbon vaults, storing more carbon per acre than tropical rainforests. When these bogs are drained and excavated for horticultural use, that locked-away carbon doesn't just disappear, it's released directly into our atmosphere as carbon dioxide, accelerating the climate crisis with every bag sold. The numbers are staggering. Peatland degradation worldwide releases nearly 3 billion tons of carbon dioxide annually. That's roughly equivalent to the emissions from global aviation, and here's the uncomfortable truth that the industry doesn't want you to know. There's no such thing as truly sustainable peat harvesting. These ecosystems accumulate at a rate of just 1 millimeter per year. Even the most responsible harvesting practices extract peat at rates hundreds of times faster than it can possibly regenerate. Now, let's shift our focus to something genuinely revolutionary that's probably sitting in your kitchen right now. Compost is nature's perfect recycling system, a living testament to the elegant efficiency of decomposition. Those vegetable peelings, coffee grounds, grass clippings, and autumn leaves aren't waste. They're raw materials for creating something infinitely more valuable than anything you could buy in a bag. The transformation from kitchen scraps to garden gold is nothing short of alchemical, orchestrated by billions of microscopic workers that break down organic matter into a dark, crumbly substance that looks humble but possesses genuinely extraordinary properties. What makes compost fundamentally different from peat moss is that it's not just a physical amendment, it's a biological powerhouse. While peat is essentially a sterile sponge, compost introduces an entire universe of life into your soil. We're talking about bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, and countless other organisms that form a complex food web right there in your garden beds. These aren't just passive residents, they're active partners in creating soil health. The fungi form symbiotic relationships with plant roots, extending their reach for water and nutrients. The bacteria break down organic matter, releasing nutrients in forms plants can actually use. This microbial community doesn't just feed your plants, it fundamentally restructures your soil at a microscopic level, creating stable aggregates that improve everything from drainage to root penetration. Let's explore the specific ways compost outperforms peat moss so dramatically that calling it an alternative almost seems insulting. First, consider water management, something every gardener wrestles with. Compost acts like a sophisticated sponge with a brain, holding moisture when your plants need it while simultaneously improving drainage to prevent waterlogging. This paradoxical ability comes from the way compost particles create pore spaces of varying sizes within the soil structure. The result? You'll water less frequently, your plants will weather dry spells more successfully, and you'll avoid the feast or famine water availability that stresses plants and reduces yields. Then there's disease suppression, one of compost's most remarkable yet underappreciated superpowers. The diverse microbial community in quality compost includes beneficial organisms that actively compete with and suppress plant pathogens. Some produce natural antibiotics, others physically outcompete disease-causing organisms for space and resources, and still others trigger plants' own immune responses. Research has consistently shown that gardens amended with compost experience significantly fewer fungal diseases, root rots, and other soil-borne problems. This isn't chemical warfare, it's biological balance, the kind of resilient ecosystem stability that synthetic fungicides can never achieve because they indiscriminately kill both friend and foe. The nutrient dynamics of compost represent yet another superpower that peat moss simply cannot match. Peat is nutritionally bankrupt, containing virtually nothing your plants can eat. Compost, conversely, is a slow-release fertilizer factory, packed with nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and a full spectrum of micronutrients. But here's where it gets really interesting. These nutrients aren't just sitting there waiting to leach away with the next rain. They're bound up in organic molecules and living organisms, released gradually as microbes break them down in response to soil temperature and moisture. Precisely when your plants are actively growing and need them most. This natural synchronization between nutrient availability and plant demand is something no synthetic fertilizer schedule can replicate. Making the switch from peat to compost is easier than you might think, regardless of your space or budget constraints. If you have outdoor space, even a simple 3-bin system or a purchased tumbler can transform your organic waste into finished compost within a few months. For apartment dwellers or those with limited outdoor areas, vermicomposting with red wiggler worms can be done indoors with virtually no odor, producing spectacular compost from kitchen scraps in a compact footprint. The key is starting. You don't need perfect conditions or expensive equipment. A pile in a corner of your yard turned occasionally and kept moist will eventually become compost through the sheer inevitability of decomposition. When it comes to replacing peat in potting mixes and garden amendments, compost can step in directly for most applications. For seed starting, where peat's fine texture has traditionally been valued, try screening your compost through 1/4-inch mesh to create a finer product. Mix it with coconut coir, which is another sustainable peat alternative, and perlite or vermiculite for drainage. For general potting mixes, use compost at about 1/3 of the total volume, combined with quality topsoil and drainage materials. In garden beds, work several inches of compost into the top layer annually, building soil organic matter steadily over time. The gardens that make this transition report not just equivalent results to peat-based systems, but genuinely superior outcomes, more vigorous plants, better yields, and soil that improves year after year rather than degrading. Every gardener who switches from peat to compost becomes part of a quiet revolution that's happening in backyards and community gardens around the world. This isn't about perfection or purity, it's about making more informed choices that align our gardening practices with our values. When you choose compost, you're voting with your wallet against the destruction of ancient ecosystems. You're reducing the carbon footprint of your garden dramatically. You're creating a closed-loop system where waste becomes resource, where nothing is truly discarded, but instead returned to the cycle of growth and renewal. The legacy we leave through our gardens extends far beyond the boundaries of our property lines. By building soil rather than merely using it as an inert growing medium, we create something that outlasts us, improves over time, and sequesters carbon rather than releasing it. That's the kind of gardening that doesn't just feed our bodies and souls, it actively heals the planet. So here's my challenge to you. Commit to composting if you haven't started already, and eliminate peat from your garden completely. Share your compost successes with neighbors. Gift seedlings grown in peat-free mixes. Become an ambassador for this better way of growing. If you found this information valuable, please subscribe to the Humus Heritage and share this video with fellow gardeners who are ready to unlock their garden's true superpowers. Together, we're not just growing plants, we're cultivating a genuinely sustainable future. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.